Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
What up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee and Toys and Ford. And don't forget to check out the Swag Cave by Resonance Branding Company. That link is in the podcast description, along with our phone number, our hotline, the Man Cave hotline. All right, where you can text us, you can leave us a voice message, questions, your analysis, comments, anything to be featured on an upcoming episode of the Man Cave Podcast. I want to hear from you. So make sure you hit us up on that Man Cave hotline. We're going to do top 5 pies with Thanksgiving coming up here. We're recording this on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So that's, it's happening right now. So our top 5 pies. We're going to talk some football. Joey D is going to be joining me here in just a little bit. But we're going to open it up with my breakdown of Packers versus the Dolphins Thanksgiving night. So let's jump right into it. Packers, Dolphins. Obviously, Matt LaFleur and both staffs for the coaching staffs for the Dolphins and the Packers. You got a few guys that are very familiar with each other, right? I mean, Matt LaFleur and Mike McDaniel, again, on branches under the same tree. They've known each other. They've worked with each other. They're friends again. Know each other really well. Jeff Hafley, spending some time with the 49ers too, knows Mike McDaniel. Campanelli, the linebackers coach for the Packers, was with the Dolphins last year. And, of course, we know the run game coordinator and linebackers coach for the Dolphins is former Packers defensive coordinator Joe Barry. So there's a lot of similarities between these two coaching staffs. A lot of connections between these two coaching staffs. Well, how have these teams fared so far? Let's take a look, starting with the offense. Where do these teams rank offensively? Dolphins, I think it's fair to say, when you think of the Dolphins, you think of their speed, you think about their receiving weapons of Tyreek and Waddle and such. You look at where they rank offensively in total yards, they're just outside the league average, so just outside halfway. But also have to factor in they did miss some games with Tua, not playing quarterback, and that's a big loss for that style, for that system, for what Miami has built. So maybe the numbers are skewed a little bit. The averages are skewed a little bit because Tua missed some time here. And now when you look at it, it seems like in these last few games, Miami specifically, Miami's maybe kind of starting to hit their stride and looking like the team that a lot of people expected or thought they would look like. They're riding a 3-game winning streak right now. Even the game against Buffalo, they fell by 3, 30-27. And their game prior to the Cardinals was 28-27. So, a couple close losses. Even the Colts before that was 16-10. So, their 3 losses before their 3 wins in a row were all one-score losses, but they've won their last 3, coming off of some dominating performances against the Raiders and the Patriots. And I know those aren't very talented teams by any stretch, but they're putting up points and they're putting up numbers that I think all of us would expect the Dolphins to be doing when they're healthy. But right now, season-wise, as we mentioned, Dolphins, total offense, total yards per game, outside the top half. Green Bay is in the top 10, or excuse me, I was looking at defensive numbers here. Green Bay is number 5 in the entire league in terms of offensive yards per game. The only 4 teams ahead of them: Baltimore, Detroit, Philadelphia, and San Francisco. When you look at passing yards per game, it's Green Bay's just outside the top 10. Miami, again, outside the top half of the league. Tua missing time factors that. Rushing yards per game, we know Green Bay's in the top 5. They're 3rd overall. And then Miami is about halfway through the mark. Miami's averaging 116.8 yards on the ground. Green Bay so far this year, 151.6. Vic Fangio leaving the Dolphins this offseason as their defense coordinator. He's over with Philadelphia. But it sure seems like Miami's defense has improved. And it just could be it wasn't a right fit, scheme-wise, personnel-wise, that sort of stuff. Miami, right now, for a total defense, is a top 10 total defense in the league. Total in terms of yards allowed per game. Okay? They're actually they're the sixth ranked defense in total yards per game. If you break it down by passing yards per game, Miami's still top 10. 197.5 yards through the air they're averaging. Rushing defense, the Dolphins are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So top 10. 106.9 yards on the ground. Points per game. Green Bay's slightly ahead of them. Miami's about just outside the top 10. Closer to the middle of the pack. They're giving up 21.5 points per game. So defensively, Miami has had a nice season. I think it's safe to say defensively the Dolphins are playing better defense this year than what they were doing last year when they got a new defensive coordinator, some new coaching staff, coaching members on there, and that sort of thing. Well, we break it down, one of the common things we've been talking a lot about in the last few weeks and so far this season has been red zones, right? Red zone defense, red zone offense. And this is where it's going to be an interesting matchup, I think, because on average, Miami right now is the seventh best red zone defense in the entire league. But for some reason, they're even better on the road. Miami is the third best red zone defense. Third best red zone defense on the road. 33.3%. Touchdowns only. We're only looking at touchdowns. So Miami's the third best on the road in red zone defense. Green Bay, for the most part of this season, it's been a struggle scoring touchdowns when they get in the red zone. However, as of late, they've been getting better at that. They've been getting better. If we look at their last 3 games for the Packers are at a rate of 64.29%. Okay? Now, the 49ers game, they were 100%. Every time they got in the red zone, touchdown over there. But they've 64.29%. To put it in perspective, so that's just their last 3 games, okay? That would place them in the top 10 if that was their season average. Baltimore is number 1 at 78.72%. Then you got Tampa Bay, and they're at 69.77 as the second place team. So they've been getting better in the red zone. But this is going to be a good test with this Packers offense that's getting better in the red zone, but going up against a defense that has been pretty solid, red zone defense, and especially when they've been on the road. That might be a key matchup in this one to kind of pay attention to. And we mentioned it yesterday too, but if you look at some of the Pro Football Focus numbers out there, one thing when it comes to the Dolphins, they struggle a little bit to tackle the ball carrier. And Josh Jacobs is coming off of a victory, coming off of a game in which he broke 15 tackles against the San Francisco 49ers. So you look at that matchup, Josh Jacobs against this defense. While they've been top 10 and ranked really well in a lot of categories, one of the issues for this Dolphins team, according to Pro Football Focus, they have the 3rd lowest tackle grade. So when we talk about matchups and key matchups, I think that's a key matchup right there. Is the Dolphins' tackling ability or lack thereof so far, and going up against Josh Jacobs. Who's going to win that matchup? Right now, I put some of the money on Josh Jacobs. Playing in the cold, going up against a warm weather team. And I think the think the Dolphins are kind of using that narrative as a little motivation, considering what happened last year in the postseason, going up against Kansas City in that gosh for awful cold game. So they're probably using that a little bit as motivation to. I know Tua said the other day, trying to get rid of those narratives, beat those narratives, and such. But you look at the last couple games here too when it comes to the Packers running game, and they've really focused on establishing the run and putting the offense, surrounding the offense, building the offensive game plan around Josh Jacobs. So I wouldn't expect anything different in this game. I wouldn't expect the Packers, unless they got to play from behind right away, I wouldn't expect the Packers to give Josh Jacobs fewer than 20-some carries in this one. You look at the last couple games, they haven't put a whole lot on Jordan Love's shoulders. He's made some big throws. He's made some big plays. But in the last couple games, he hasn't been throwing 30, 40 attempts. It's been under 20 or just over 20. So I think a big key for the Packers in this game, a huge key, is getting Josh Jacobs going, getting that running game going, controlling the clock, controlling time of possession, having those 7-minute, 8-minute drives, and keeping that Dolphins offense on the sideline. That might be your best defensive game plan going up against the Dolphins offense. That can be dangerous. Your best game plan might be, let's try to keep them on the sideline as much as possible. How do you do that? Establishing a run, having success running the football, but then, coming away with touchdowns here too. For example, look at the first drive in that 49ers game. The Packers ran 12 plays and took 7 minutes and 25 seconds off the clock, and they came away with a touchdown. Beautiful drive. Perfect drive. Perfect drive to begin a game. Perfect drive to keep the other team's offense on the sideline. Their third possession of the game, not counting the field goal one there, but their third possession, which they had another touchdown. 12 plays, just under 7 minutes. That's the type of game plan. Some of their touchdowns, it was just 3 plays because it was on turnovers and such, but their last touchdown, 10 plays, 6.5 minutes off the clock. That's what I want to see in this game against the Dolphins. Long drives, ending in touchdowns. Not field goals, ending in touchdowns. Taking 6.5, 7, 8 minutes off the clock. And it starts by having success in the running game. It starts up front with those offensive linemen opening up those holes. It starts with Matt LaFleur continuing to be creative with his running attack, with his schemes. He's kind of, Mike McDaniel the last couple of years, I think, has been kind of the guy, and Andy Reid too. But Mike McDaniel, I think, kind of gets the credit, and rightfully so, of being this guy that has some really creative formations and plays and that. Matt LaFleur is kind of doing it this year with the running game. So what are the ways that he could continue to get some misdirection, create some holes for his running attack, having success on running? Winning those early downs is key. First down, not losing any yardage, not having stupid penalties. Green Bay did a nice job. They had a couple penalties, stupid penalties in that game against San Francisco, but they overcame them. Win your early downs. Having success on first and second down and creating those third and shorts, that's what's going to allow you to have these extended drives, and that's what's going to allow you to keep running the football and successfully. So, key matchup, key to this game, having success running the football, starts with the offensive line, Josh Jacobs, but also the game plan, the calls, the creativity from Matt LaFleur. And winning the time of possession. And if you go back a couple years when they played on Christmas Day, if you remember that game, Aaron Rodgers was still quarterback, and Green Bay, that was an upset. Green Bay pulled off the upset in that game. And a big reason why they did, they were able to force some turnovers against Tua. Remember, Jair had the pick. I think Rasul Douglas had the game-sealing pick. Devondre Campbell had a pick in that game. So what can this secondary, which by all accounts will not have Jair Alexander in it, what can this secondary, what can this defense do to create some turnovers against Tua? What's the game plan? Well, how do you attack this offense? Tua this year, 13 touchdown passes, 4 interceptions. He hasn't been turning the ball over a ton. But what is this game plan? How do you attack this knowing that they've got speed on the outside and you're missing your top corner? I would expect probably the Packers to play a little zone, trying not to get beat over the top. So is that a recipe for the Dolphins, where Mike McDaniel's going to look at this and be like, okay, they want to give a little cushion, we're going to attack them how Chicago and Detroit attacked them. Shorter passing game, getting the ball in to Tyreek Hill's hands, getting the ball into Jalen Waddle's hands, and letting them use their speed and beating the defense. Do you play with a little cushion? Do you be aggressive knowing that it could burn you, but maybe you're hoping that your pressure, your front 4, your front 7 can get after them? That, to me, is going to be key, is how Jeff Hafley plays his secondary, how he plays, or what's the game plan defensively going up against these guys without Jair Alexander. Curious to see how this goes. I think he's going to play a little zone. And if he's going to play a little zone, those guys got to get home. We got to bring the pressure up the middle. And Tua's a good scrambler, getting outside the pocket, but we got to get him off his mark. We can't let him get comfortable back there. You look at his completion percentages in these last few games here. I mean, his completion percentages, Tua's completion percentages is just ridiculous right now. Patriots, 72.5%. Against the Raiders, 77.8%. Rams, 71.4%. Buffalo, he was 25 of 28 for 89.3%. Cardinals, 73.7%. That's his last 5 games. In his last 5 games, he's thrown 1 pick. How do you get Tua off the mark? How can you get to him quickly? How can you make him a little bit nervous back there? How do you create some turnovers? I'm looking at guys like Quay Walker. For me, this is a dude that's got to have a game tomorrow night. He's got to build off the success that he had in that game against the 49ers. And this is a guy that I think you might have to bring up the middle just to get some instant pressure on Tua. But then those ends, I'm talking Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness, Enoch Barre, Cox or whoever's playing on the edge. If you're able to generate the pressure up the middle, you better contain that edge and not let Tua get to the edge and outside and maybe, rush for a big gain. But they have got to get some pressure on Tua, and they've got to bring it all day, and they've got to get it there right away. And you look at the last 5 games, Tua hasn't been running a whole lot either. In fact, against New England, he was credited with 3 carries for -2 yards. Okay? Las Vegas, 0-0. Rams, 1 and -1. Buffalo, 2 and 3. Arizona, 3 for 13. And that's a lot of it's probably by design too, because let's face it, they got to protect Tua with his concussions. So they're not going to have designed runs for him. But if there's a big opening because Green Bay is going to blitz after him, and there's this huge opening where he's going to have daylight, he's probably going to take it. So how can you rattle Tua? How can you get in that backfield and get after him right away? Guy has been accurate. He's been composed in his last few games. You got to be able to put some pressure on him and confuse him a little bit. Try to confuse him a little bit. Don't let him get the ball out so quick. Hands up if you're the defensive line. But I think this is a game where Quay Walker has to show his athleticism, has to stack success, and build upon the game that he had against the 49ers. He is the guy. He is the guy that has got to step up and try to get after Tua and try to get Tua off his mark. This is an interesting matchup to me in terms of, I think Miami's defense is a little underrated. A lot of people not talking about it when you kind of break it down and you look at some numbers and such. Going up against this Packers offense, I think that's going to be an interesting matchup. But then also Hafley's defense, is Packers defense, going up against these weapons, these speedsters from the Dolphins here. And I don't know if this will be a big factor, but I think it's something to note. It is a short week, and the team that is traveling is one of the older teams in the league based off of age, average age. Green Bay, coming off the shorter week, staying at home, and they're the youngest team in the league. Can fresher legs, younger legs at that point, be the difference in this game? If you're Green Bay, don't give extra possessions. Do not turn the ball over. Even in that game against San Francisco, there were still a couple throws from Jordan Love where, let's be real, he got lucky they weren't picked. And I think that's just something we're going to have to live with Jordan Love. There's going to be a couple throws each game where we're like, oh, thank gosh. Or, what are you doing? I think that's what we're going to have to live with Love right now. And let's be real. We've gone through that before. We've gone through it with the extreme with Farvey. Okay? We've been there before. Maybe not some of the younger fans. But if we got younger fans there who don't remember Favre, trust me, you're just kind of like holding your breath for almost every single throw. You don't know what was going to happen with some of that stuff. Don't turn the ball over and give Miami extra possessions in this game. You can't. But if you're that Packers defense and you can force some turnovers, which has kind of been hard to come by as of late, going up against Tua in this passing offense from the Dolphins, try to get those opportunities. Don't drop any anymore either, Quay Walker, like he did again against San Francisco. You get some hands on the ball, you come away with it. Try to get those turnovers. Try to get those extra possessions. And I think, too, we focus so much on Tyreek and Waddle for obvious reasons. We get it. But what Green Bay cannot do, what they cannot do is forget about the Dolphins running game either with Devin over there. 562 yards on the ground. He's averaging 4.3 yards per carry. Dolphins are probably going to want to come into this thing. And he had 10 carries against New England. They're not a team that's going to 20, which is kind of interesting. Mike McDaniel comes from the Shanahan style. And, we're seeing LaFleur kind of really employing a Shanahan-style offense by focusing on running the football. That's what Shanahan's want to do. And you look at Mike McDaniel, it's kind of been a lot of passing stuff mixed in with a little run game here. But I would imagine that Miami wants to try to come in, and if it is a little colder, they want to try to establish the run. And they want to try to have some success running the football. The thing is, too, they really utilize the running backs in the passing game. And that's something that they will have to prepare for, those linebackers. So I wish Edgerrin Cooper was in this game. Using that speed, using that athleticism. But I think when it all comes down to it, to kind of wrap it up or to bring it all back together here, the key matchups, keys to victories and such. For the Packers, long offensive drives that come away with touchdowns. Which Packers red zone offense is going to show up? Is it going to be the red zone offense that's showed up the last couple games where they've gotten better? Or is it going to be the red zone offense that has been kind of a clunker? Because you're going up against a very good red zone defense with the Dolphins. And we know to beat the Dolphins, you're going to have to score touchdowns instead of field goals. So those long drives, that ends in touchdowns. Taking a lot of time off the clock, keeping Tua and company on the sidelines. Packers defensively, a big key here is going to be what Jeff Hafley decides to do in terms of coverage. Not having Jair Alexander going up against those speedy guys. Is he going to play aggressive, or is he going to play a little zone? He's probably going to play a little zone is my guess. And if that's the case, how do you attack Tua, who has been playing some really good football as of late and completing a high percentage of passes? How do you get after him and get him off his mark and provide some constant pressure back there? Not necessarily sacks, but getting in the backfield and kind of disrupting the timing of everything. And getting off the field on third downs. Okay, you get in a third down situation, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, get off the field. Otherwise, you're going to be hitting the oxygen tanks quite a bit if you're on the defense. Guys who got to have a game, I'm going to go Quay Walker on the defensive side. I think he's got to have a game. I think he's going to be the guy that's, whether he's coming on the blitzes, pressures, he's got to be the guy that's got to be that disruptor against Tua, maybe even in the with the running backs who Miami utilizes quite a bit in terms of some of the passing game options over there too. So Quay Walker's got to be the guy on the defensive side. I'm going to go Josh Jacobs again for the offense because I think if the Packers can get their running game going again, and he's having success running the football and having success on those early downs, picking up big yardages on 1st and 2nd down, and just playing that style of football and just running it down the field, Packers have a good shot at winning this game. So my dudes, my guys that got to have games, I'm going to go Quay Walker and Josh Jacobs. Wild card one, I hope we don't get to see him a whole lot, but you never know. Daniel Whelan continuing to punt the crap out of that ball and field position because it might be a field position battle. Make Miami try to go the length of the field to get any of those points. All right, let's talk some more Packers, but first we're going to take a quick break, and then Joey D is going to join us to talk a little green and gold after these quick words. Are you hosting family and friends for the holiday season this year? Hey, that can be pretty stressful trying to figure out what to prepare, who likes what to eat, and so on. Well, you can take some of that stress off your plate by simply visiting Hy-Vee in Eau Claire. Whether you will be tackling the cooking yourself or you need some help with preparing meals this holiday season, Hy-Vee can help you out in so many different ways. Whether you want to shop and save some money or you need help with some catering, Hy-Vee in Eau Claire has you covered. So stop on in and get started for your holiday preparations today. Family owned and operated, Toyson Ford is proud to serve the drivers of the Chippewa Valley with some of the most popular vehicles around Wisconsin and the country. They're committed to giving drivers from across the area the best in customer service with a top-notch selection of brand new vehicles to choose from, as well as an extensive inventory of pre-owned crossover, SUV, and trucks. Plus, with their expert finance, service, and parts centers in-house, they strive to be your one-stop dealership for all of your automotive needs. Visit them today at 1000 Chippewa Crossing Boulevard in Chippewa Falls. Badger football.
Speaking of trying to be invested in games.
Yeah, so we know they're going to have a new offensive coordinator. We've already seen some players saying they're entering the transfer portal. Now, Justice, I kind of said this in the first hour. I'm of the age, my first memories are watching the 90s teams with Barry Alvarez as head coach and that. So this is a very unique offseason. Yes, we've had coaching changes, with Bielema leaving, and there was the Gary Anderson or Paul Chris coming in, et cetera, et cetera. We've had those. But I can't remember another offseason where I went and okay, this is this program is not in a good position. It's kind of fallen down. The coach has to nail this offseason. He has to nail his offensive coordinator. Yet the schedule is so hard again next year for Badger football. I don't remember ever being in a position like this and I'm sure I'm probably missing a couple years, but it's a unique offseason where I don't remember going through as a fan.
No, I think this is one of the more pivotal, I can't even say it. Pivotal. Wow. Off seasons for the Badgers, really, because like you said, I don't think they've really been in this position. I think they've been middle of the road a lot of times, 7-5, something like that.
Yep.
To be 5-7 and probably shouldn't be in a bowl game, might somehow, but I think right now that it would take an academic thing and people decline. So it would basically take a Hail Mary for them to actually get into a bowl game.
Right.
But they don't deserve to be in one the way they've played the last few weeks.
No.
So it really, I mean, I don't know. We haven't had a lot of years where it's like make or break with a Badger football coach. Even Paul Chryst, I don't feel like that year he went in when he got fired was like, oh, this is make or break.
Right.
I think that team just so underperformed that they figured there was no choice but to make a change. So,
yep.
I mean, Fickell was this is the biggest hire they had made, I'd say, ever.
Yeah.
I mean, Barry Alvarez is the most important hiring they ever made, but there wasn't like, when he was hired, it wasn't like this is going to change the look of Wisconsin football. He just did that. Barry shaped this program. And Fickell came in with obviously the Ohio State pedigree. He had been at Cincinnati and found success.
Yep.
But it has not followed here. And the offense has regressed, even maybe worse than it's been, down towards the end of the Paul Chryst era, where at least you had something to, I don't know what you're even banking on right now, because the running game isn't there.
Quarterback is definitely not there.
And then the defense has faded. Yeah. It just disappeared. So, yeah, this is very much going to be a make-or-break offseason for this Badger team and Luke Fickell.
And, I think Chris McIntosh is going to be a little bit kind of, because this was, a lot of fans and alumni, too, are going to be like, okay, this is the guy you chose over Jimmy Leonard.
Dan Leonard, right.
And that was the guy a lot of people wanted. But, yeah, when Luke Fickell was hired, you still had people that wanted Jimmy Leonard, but there was also, I think, a lot of, this was the common answer, feel bad for Jimmy, but pumped that they actually got a guy like Luke Fickell.
Right. He's the biggest name. That was the big name out there, and for them to bring him in, it's a splash.
Yep.
But as we talked before, like, that grass is always greener. You've had a lot of Wisconsin guys come in for that job. Like, you've had kind of a tradition there. But the last time you didn't, it was Gary Anderson.
Right.
And that didn't work out.
No.
And now, you could have had Jimmy Leonard, and you have a guy who's going to have those in-state ties. And if you're not getting those big transfer portal guys, which I don't see Wisconsin has not been doing it, you almost have to be so good at your recruiting your own base that you're getting the best guys in your state.
Right.
It's just right now, I don't know where Wisconsin is as a program. They want to be one of those top Big Ten programs. Are they going to spend the money to be those programs? Because that's what it's all about now.
Yep.
And I just don't think, Wisconsin, it's tough. It is really a tough situation to be in, because I think Wisconsin, obviously, as an academic school, is one of the top in the country.
Right.
At what point do you almost have to sell out your morals and start dishing out more money? College football's in an ugly place right now. It really is. We were talking off air. It's in a bad position right now, because how do you build without just being a rebuild every year? And that's what we're seeing now with these top programs. It's almost like, okay, well, we're Georgia. We do great. Well, let's go. The rich keep getting richer, and it's going to be tough for Wisconsin to find their place in this day and age in college football.
Well, it's essentially who was the number one quarterback that went to Michigan. It's like it was all about the moolah, though, right? It's like that's what you're going to have to go to. And now, with the programs having to shell out money to players, now you're seeing colleges saying, yeah, we're not going to have as many student athletes anymore. Because those numbers are going to go down. And I think you're at a point now, too, you're going to have to play guys younger. You can't – remember it was like Alabama was like, oh, they're stacking quarterbacks. 1 year it's Jalen Hurts, then it's Tua, it's like the next year and all that. You can't do that anymore.
Because the guys aren't going to have any patience.
Right. You're going to have to play your younger guys right away.
Yeah, and I'm not blaming the players.
No.
This goes on in college football. They had years to try to get a system in place. Instead, they just ripped the Band-Aid off. Instead of having like a tier, maybe like a little bit, hey, you can, if you want to go out there and use your image and likeness and make money, fine.
Yep.
That's fine. And if they would have done that, I think that kind of stems this tide of, hey, now we have to really actually pay guys big money to go in. Because if guys are making this on their own, the schools don't have to get involved. But they fought it and fought it and fought it until the point they just threw up their hands and said, yeah, we're done.
Right.
So then the flood came in, and now there's no controls anymore.
Nope.
Everything is
and you can't go back.
It's the Wild West. Yeah, you opened it up. Good luck.
Exactly. Hey, at least there's a couple Badger teams, though, that are doing fairly well. Badger basketball's 11-0 to begin the season. But what the heck? They only scored 74 against Chicago State. They didn't get over 79 for that game, for crying out loud. They were
The streak's gone.
Done. What's wrong with them? Michigan coming up tomorrow, but then that big game against Marquette on Saturday. That's going to be fantastic.
Well, you don't want to overlook Michigan, though, because
No.
that's your conference opener.
Right.
And, yeah, I mean, that's a big game. That's a good two big stretch there with those two games.
And then Illinois right after Marquette, which, could be a good one, too.
So that basketball team, I've loved what I've seen from it. I think you like to, they make it close, but that's still the Badgers.
Yep,
It's still going to be the Badgers. Badger going to Badger. But the way they've been able to make adjustments mid-game, which I don't think they were doing as well last couple seasons. There's been games where they've just taken like Crowell out and said,
"Yep,
we can't use you right now because everybody's going small against us. We're going to have to take you out and go small ourselves and find success with it." That shows me that this team has a really good build, and I think one that hopefully can sustain it this whole season.
Mondays we kind of do I'm not saying, I'm just saying sort of thing. So I'll throw one out there. I'm not saying he's the best player in the country, but I'm saying that John Tonje might start to get some looks at maybe Naismith National Player of the Year.
Oh, I think so. If he keeps playing the way he is, I mean, what a signing. You talk about the signings and guys transferring.
Transfer portal, yeah.
Basketball is kind of in the same boat, but I feel like in a different way because you still have to have. It feels like with college football, it's almost like you can clean a slate. Right. Whereas basketball-wise, it's almost like you keep some core guys, but you add another guy. And I think right now, it's a good exchange from what they had last year. Tonje seems like he's in a good place there to really help this team and seems like a really good team player.
Hear what Chucky Hepburn said a couple days ago?
No, I did not.
So this was some of his quotes. Senior year, I had kind of been laying in the back seat for quite a long time, and it's time to show the world who Chucky Hepburn is. I'm a bucket getter, one of the best point guards in the country, and I stand by that. He did score 32 points in that game, I think, but yeah, that's...
And so is Chucky saying he didn't have the opportunity? Because, I mean, if you were watching Badger basketball the last couple of years, Chucky was touching the ball all the time.
Yeah.
But he wanted to be the go-to guy, where he was probably asked to be the facilitator more or less. He still scored a lot, so.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we're talking about college athletics now, and if a guy feels like he's not getting his due, see ya.
Yep.
It doesn't take much for these guys, or somebody whispering in your ear like, hey, man, he's scoring 30, but you're the man, you'd be scoring 35. Well, you got to get out of here. Go somewhere else. Go. Gosh. And that's all it takes is like, somebody probably whispering in your ear saying, hey, it's the devil's on, the devil and angel on your
devil
side.
And angel, yep, exactly.
And it doesn't take much, especially when you're in your 20s. And we've been there.
Yep.
You're very susceptible. I'm not even going to try to say
susceptible.
that word. Thank you. The tongue's not warmed up for the week, but yeah.
All right, that is going to do it for us on this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. And again, don't forget to check out the Swag Cave, the Residence Branding Company Swag Cave. That link is in the podcast description. Also, leave me a voicemail, send me a text on the Man Cave hotline. That number is also in the podcast description. Also, if you could give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on podcasting platforms like Apple and Spotify, and click that follow, subscribe to our YouTube channel over there too. So, gotta get those. Would appreciate that if you could take a couple minutes and do that. So, till next time, though, I'm Dan Casper, and I'll talk to you on the next episode of the Man Cave Podcast.